there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the CC Report. Today we've got two items to discuss for you, one about Caitlin herself and the other about the situation around the league. And the first thing that we have to talk about is Caitlin herself. Today, she reposted on her Instagram a picture of Tyrese Haliburton talking about one of the lessons that he was learning as he recovered from his devastating injury that he suffered in the NBA Finals last year. The relevant quote from Haliburton is, "I think that what I've learned in the last 12 months is that it takes a village and it's okay not to be okay." And this was taken from Tyrese Haliburton's interview with the Athletic HQ to Shakia Taylor a few days ago. And I really just wanted to point this out and talk about this on the CC Report, just because we've, in the moment, spent with Caitlin all of last year. It was an extremely difficult time. It hurt for all of us to look at Caitlin and see her suffer her injuries as she did. It hurt for us to see her play in reduced capacity to what she's normally used to playing. It hurt for us to see her in physical pain when she re-injured her groin in Connecticut. And it hurt for us to see her not on the court, even though we saw her on the sideline all the time. When the team started to do well and she started to be more enthusiastic, her level of dedication to the team was extremely impressive in my mind, but at the same time, you could tell that it was killing her not to be on that court. And it wasn't just Caitlin that was feeling that way. We saw the same pain in Sophie Cunningham when Sophie Cunningham got injured. We saw the same sort of pain in Ari McDonald when she got injured, on and on down the line. And in the short term, at the time, I think that it was very difficult for both Caitlin and her fan base to live through that experience. But in the long term, I just wanted to point out that it is going to be a benefit to Caitlin in a lot of different ways. First of all, unfortunately, in today's day and age, injury is a fact of life, and it is likely that Caitlin was not going to go through her entire WNBA career without suffering injury in some way, shape, or form. The fact that she was able to do it now and was able to kind of get that first injury out of the way is going to benefit her in the future, because if she ever does get hurt again, she's going to know what that's like and what her feeling injured is like. And more importantly, she has gone on record as saying that she didn't necessarily know when to push through her injury versus when to maybe take it easy, take a step back from her injury and let herself heal. And the implication being that maybe she tried to return from injury too soon once or twice. And this situation is hopefully not going to happen again, because Caitlin will know that she is in fact injured and that she does need to take it easy, and is going to be able to better pinpoint when those times are going to be. But secondly, she also was able to learn from the bench. She was able to understand from a coach's perspective what the coaches see on the floor when she is out there. She's going to be able to understand when and how the players that are not Caitlin are able to execute the offense without her. She's going to be able to put herself in their shoes. We all know that from a very early age, one of Caitlin's things that she's needed to work on is her ability to put herself in other players' shoes. And I think that this experience has gone a long way towards helping her be able to do that. So we've got a number of different reasons why it was actually, in the long term, beneficial for Caitlin to suffer injury when she did. Is she going to get through the rest of her career without suffering another injury? Please, I hope for the sake of Caitlin and for the sake of my sanity, that she is able to get through the rest of her career without suffering a catastrophic injury. But part of that is knowing when to push through the injury and when to sort of stay back and let the healing do its work. And I think that if there's one lesson that she's learned from all of this, it is that she needs to not push herself so hard. She needs to not push herself through even minor injuries. She needs to let herself become all the way recovered so that she can be out on the court with her teammates, instead of try to go back out on the court at less than 100%, which is something that she clearly did last year. So that's the first thing to talk about. I think that this is sort of really encouraging, not only from an empathetic standpoint, you know, her being commiserating with Tyrese a little bit, but her also showing that she's matured and she is able to learn a lesson from her experience from last year going into next year and beyond. The second thing to talk about, a news article that was released today on Twitter from Front Office Sports, specifically from Andy Constable, regarding the league Unrivaled and regarding the ratings that Unrivaled has enjoyed in the beginning of its past second season that just started. So let's go ahead and go through this article a little bit and just talk about some of what it says and the implications. Here we go. In its inaugural season, Unrivaled was a spectacle, drawing a sold-out crowd of 870 eager eyes hungry for basketball to watch during the WNBA offseason. The new format was intriguing, and the salaries and the player accommodations that rivaled the WNBA's were cause for fan celebration. In year two, the sparkle has worn off. The campus just beyond Miami city limits was quieter during opening weekend of the 3-on-3 league second season. The fan fest outside was less of a throng and more of a collection of supporters. Inside, the renovated arena, which added roughly 150 seats, bringing the capacity from 850 to 1,000 fans, seats were empty. And most concerningly for the second-year league, ratings on TNT were lackluster. Unrivaled's opening slate on January 5th, which kicked off with a Monday afternoon game, averaged 175,000 viewers in the two games that aired both on TNT and True TV. The two True TV exclusive games on January the 5th averaged 32,000 viewers. Games on January 9th averaged 139,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The four games that aired January 10th and January 11th averaged 71,000 viewers on True TV. All Unrivaled games also air on HBO Max, which is not measured by Nielsen. That is a steep drop compared to its first season, when the league averaged 221,000 viewers on TNT across the regular season and playoffs, peaking at 377,000 viewers for the final of the one-on-one tournament. The opening last night averaged 312,000 viewers all across TNT and True TV. The 2026 games faced a competitive broadcast window with the NFL wildcard round and the college football playoffs. And the article goes on from there. I want to be very clear about my position and others' position regarding Unrivaled, because I think that some people have gotten it twisted. Some people have said that in the past I've wanted Unrivaled to fail, or that I'm cheering for the league's downfall, or why can't I just root for Unrivaled to succeed? Why do I not want these ladies to get their money? And I just want to make it perfectly clear that any organization out there, whether it's Unrivaled, whether it's Athletes Unlimited, whether it's EuroLeague, whether it's Project B, any organization that wants to get these ladies paid and wants to get these ladies the money that they deserve, I am all in favor of. In fact, I root for those organizations. I want for them to succeed. However, it is because I want those organizations to succeed. It is because I am concerned with women's sports. It is because I want to make sure that every single person that is a participant in those leagues and other leagues is well compensated, that I want to make sure that we are observing Unrivaled with a critical eye and be able to point out when it is failing, which is the situation right now. This is a business venture in Unrivaled that began on tenuous footing with a market of indeterminate size that nobody really knew was going to have even any kind of market at all at the very beginning. And it was a product that was initially pitched to the public as a product that was for the players' benefit. Nafisa Collier, Stewie, both went on record when Unrivaled was first announced and said, the purpose of this league is to give our player base an opportunity to play in the United States and not to play overseas, and to continue to be well compensated for it. That was the stated goal of Unrivaled when it first started, and it continues to be the goal of Unrivaled up into the present day. It is my argument that this is not a good reason to have a league be formed from a publicity standpoint. It is not a good reason to have a league formed from a consumer standpoint. And it is not a good reason, in my opinion, to start a league from an investor standpoint. Because if the league itself is for itself, then by definition, it cannot prioritize the consumer base. And indeed, we are seeing that manifest by a consumer base not responding as you would have hoped to the existence of a new league. There are other things that have happened with Unrivaled that have made it very difficult for a fan to be invested in Unrivaled. Start out not only with the tenuous footing that the business started with, but also their failure to secure the biggest needle mover in all of women's sports, and their failure not only to secure that person, but also their failure to secure two of the three biggest needle movers in all of women's sports, that being Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. Their failure to acquire either of these two women to participate in their startup league is a huge blow to the ability of that league to be able to attract attention. That's incredibly important when your metric by which you measure success or failure is its viewership numbers. And specifically, we are seeing the consequence of the non-participation of those two specific players regarding the viewership numbers as we just saw them in year 2. That is a huge misstep. And even somebody like me, I'm not a venture capitalist. I'm not somebody that spends a lot of time looking at what is a wise investment and what is not a wise investment. But even somebody like me who is a layman about this can look at the choices that Unrivaled has made and understand that they are not the best choices that could have been made from a consumer standpoint. Additionally, we've got other choices that the league has made and other pieces of constructive criticism that the league has simply ignored and has not responded to. And as a result, we've got the product that we have on the floor. Those pieces of feedback have been increase the league to a 5x5 league. We've got expansion of Unrivaled in terms of teams, having expanded and added 2 different teams. But instead of adding 2 different teams, they could have easily kept the same number of teams that they had last year and made it a 5x5 league instead of making it a 3-on-3 league. This is a piece of feedback that several prominent people have given Unrivaled, and they've refused to accept it. What about enlarging the court, making the court a little bit bigger so that we're not seeing half-court shots be the equivalent of Caitlin's regular logo threes? What about taking it out of the television studio and actually putting it in a real arena? Because right now, it feels like American Gladiators, it feels like Guts from Nick Jr. back in the day. It doesn't feel, to me, like an actual real sporting event. It seems like a highly produced, made for TV event, which is something that I personally find less engaging. Even if the athletic competition is legitimate, it's still less engaging to me from a standpoint of I want to actually see something that feels like a game. Right now, the stakes for Unrivaled feel very low and feel very manufactured. It is the league's choice to not do these things. That is fine. It is their league. They can choose to do what they want. But if they do choose to not accept the feedback and alter their product in a way that makes it more appealing to more consumers, then what you're going to get is what you've seen, a niche consumer base that may or may not be loyal to your product, but at the same time has no appeal to a broader or wider audience. And to me, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of effort by Unrivaled to capture that broader audience. Instead, they seem to be just happy to keep their niche fan base. And I'm sorry, it's just not large enough for them to be able to sustain over the course of time, and especially in the face of not only the WNBA, but these other competitive leagues that are also going to be occurring during the offseason and which have a lot more money to throw around, such as Project B, which is an existential threat to Unrivaled. So even a doofus like me can understand that when you're making decisions like this, you're not creating a league that is best for the consumer. And when you're not able to attract your top needle movers to participate in your league, it is going to mean that there's even less potential for you to be able to sustain into the long term. Finally, we need to talk about how this affects the CBA negotiations that are currently ongoing, because I do think that these numbers have an effect on the CBA negotiations. One of the biggest prongs of the WNBA Players Association's position, platform, argument against the league has been that it isn't just one or two players that have created this spike in interest from the general public in the WNBA and have created this spike in revenue, right? But they feel that it is due to all of the participants in the league. These viewership numbers directly countermand that argument. It directly undercuts it, because it is showing that without the participation of a few, specifically 2 or 3 select players, the league viewership has every other star imaginable, or many of the other stars imaginable, but it is still not generating nearly the viewership that we've seen with the WNBA, even though one of those stars didn't participate at all in the league last year. So we're seeing these viewership numbers not carry over, and I really think that the WNBPA did themselves a disservice by failing to reach a deal before these numbers were released to the public, because it directly undercuts their argument and it bolsters the argument of the other side. So we've now got our status quo is now that the league has new ammunition in its fight against the Players Association to not accede to their demands for a higher piece of revenue share, because the league can look at these numbers and use them as an argument that, in fact, this is not a sustainable avenue of growth. In fact, this growth is generated only by a few players. And in fact, if we were to take the step of giving you all of the revenue share that you are seeking, that ultimately, once those players are out of the league would not be in a sustainable condition. And you know what? Based on these numbers, right now, today, they'd be right. So we've got a situation now where Unrivaled has proven the league's case for it. And that's something that, in my mind, big tactical error, and it's going to really affect the negotiations moving forward. Can a compromise, can a deal still be reached? Yes, but I think that the player base is going to need to be a little more chastened by these numbers, because the reality is something a little bit different than what they thought the reality was. So that's where we're at with the CBA and with Unrivaled. I want to make it clear again, I root for Unrivaled and I want it to succeed. If it succeeds, it means that the participants in Unrivaled get paid, and that's a good thing, but it also means that it gives the player base more leverage in their CBA negotiations. But for Unrivaled to succeed, it needs to make some changes and it needs to do some work in order for it to better appeal to its audience. So that's where the CBA negotiations stand. That's where Unrivaled stands today, and we've already talked about where Caitlin stands as well. So this has been the CC Report. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked the content, please make sure you like and subscribe. I know this has kind of been a spicy one, but unfortunately, that's kind of where we are today. But everybody have a wonderful day, and we will see you in the next one.